You know what? It really may make sense. But that's sitting in my conference room with me present and inviting that law enforcement officer in. And if that law enforcement officer starts getting sideways, that's timeout. Timeout. We're kicking you out of the room so that we can confer. And that really might be the end of the statement. That is the only way that I can think that would be a good way to give a statement. So the answer is not always no. The other thing too is people really do believe, hey, listen, if a law enforcement officer asks me questions, I have to answer them. No, you do not. This is America. So many times people confuse the power of law enforcement with patriotism. No, no. Patriotism is that law enforcement officer respecting your right, your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and confer with counsel. That's what America is.
Well, as kids, at least our generation, as kids growing up, we were taught to have a lot of respect for law enforcement. And I still do have a lot of
Of
respect for law
course.
enforcement because they put their life on the line daily to make sure everyone is safe. However, I don't think a lot of people really understand the psychological dynamics of the police showing up and saying, I need to talk to you. Because we have been ingrained, from the very beginning, when we're small kids, if you get lost, you get separated from me, grab a cop, call the cops, call 911, to trust and, to cooperate because we are good Americans. And that's a root instinct for good people. People who have a lot of experience with criminal proceedings or they have a gut instinct the other way, right? So if you're a good person who's always following the rules, who's always lived in the norms of society, it's very sometimes counterintuitive to look at a police officer and say, not today, not now, I would like my lawyer. And people, I think, feel like they're guilty because they invoke the right, but invoking the right is your constitutional right to not self-incriminate and to not be put into a position where you're having a person, an officer, maybe an unscrupulous officer, put pressure on you. And I mean, I remember when I did criminal law that there was allegedly this confession that took place because the person didn't invoke the Fifth Amendment. They didn't invoke the Sixth Amendment to have their attorney present, and they gave the statement. And so allegedly there was this long, drawn out confession. But guess what? It wasn't recorded. There was no video recording. There was no audio recording. And I remember asking on cross examination, does the sheriff's office not have enough? Or what's the budget of the sheriff's office? And in that, whatever it was, $10 million or whatever, did y'all not have the money to go to Best Buy and get a digital recorder? Do you not? We have them. We didn't have batteries. Do you not have the money for the batteries? How many years have you been doing this as an investigator? In that time, has no one ever, taught you or any of your training experience ever led you to the conclusion that perhaps you should have the recorder on? Because there are times where we've had cases in the 14th Circuit, unfortunately, I think, where there have been alleged confessions that um, that didn't actually take place because another agency had a tape recorder on and the one agency didn't know they had the tape recorder on. And when the criminal defense attorney found the tape recorder, if I remember correctly, there was no confession. It had went down a different way or they had invoked rights or something of that nature. So having your attorney there creates a record, it creates protection, it creates someone to take the pressure off and who knows the rules. And I tell people all the time, I'm a nice guy. I don't want to be the bad guy, but push comes to shove, let me be the bad guy. I will tell them, I did criminal offense. I will tell them, hey, that's enough. We're done, or we're not talking. Or in a family law case, I'll be the bearer of bad news that we're not accepting that settlement. Let me do the talking. Let me be the bad guy. That's what you're paying me to take the pressure off of you and help you in this time that you're under a lot of pressure.